What if your retirement savings could make Elon Musk sweat? Welcome to Norway, where ordinary pensioners control a $1.4 trillion fund that can make or break global companies with a single vote. Born from a single lucky oil well in 1969, this sovereign wealth fund now owns 1.5% of the world's publicly traded stocks, wielding more financial power than most countries, all for the benefit of 5.5 million Norwegian citizens. Let's go back in time to the end of World War II. The European economy is slowly recovering and gaining momentum. One of the driving forces was meant to be industry and new technologies. In 1960, a massive natural gas deposit was discovered in Groningen in the Netherlands. For the Dutch, this sounded like hitting the jackpot. Most importantly, the gas reserves were found both on land and within the coastal area of the country. The discovered gas field began to ignite the imagination of neighboring countries. One after another, they started wondering, what else lies beneath the restless waters of the North Sea? One of these countries was undoubtedly the United Kingdom. Struggling with a weak economy after World War II, potential hydrocarbon reserves appeared to be a powerful economic driver. But this raised a crucial question. Who owns what? Meanwhile, in Norway, no one seriously believed that the land or nearby waters held anything more than rich flora and fauna. At that time, the government focused on developing hydropower in the shipbuilding industry. The search for larger energy reserves was merely a distant prospect. The United Kingdom wanted to begin exploration as quickly as possible without wasting time on lengthy negotiations. Therefore, the median line principle was applied, drawing a boundary on the map, just like the borders of a newly formed African state. It was a pivotal moment, because as time passed, it became clear that most of the richest drilling reserves were just beyond the borderline on the Norwegian side. After research work began off the coast of the United Kingdom, a group of American oil companies started showing interest in exploring the seabed in Norwegian waters. In Viking land, there was no company with the know-how for extraction, so Norway signed agreements for drilling in exchange for assistance with the extraction process. The search went on for a long time and yielded no spectacular results. The American company Phillips Petroleum drilled over 30 wells without any success. The oil company's management decided to halt the operations, convinced that they would find nothing. However, the Norwegian government forced them to drill one more well. The breakthrough came on the morning of August 30th, 1969, in the very heart of the ocean abyss. At 2 a.m., the peaceful sleep of the manager of well number 33 was interrupted by the sound of opening doors. A breathless worker burst in, drenched by the rain, slamming his hands on the table. "We found it!" Well number 33, named Ekofisk, which later became the most profitable well in history, had just secured its place in the history books. The company's management delivered this information to the Norwegian government the day before Christmas Eve. Thus, the Norwegians received a historic gift under the Christmas tree. In 1971, the first extraction began, and oil, along with money, started flowing through Norwegian lands. As soon as Norwegian politicians realized the scale of the fortune they were dealing with, they decided to create a mechanism to ensure that the largest possible share of the resource extraction profits remained in the hands of the people. The Norwegians were well aware of how extraction companies operated at the time. Profits were usually funneled abroad, leaving countries with only a fraction of their earnings and a hole in the ground. The government set resource prices for tax purposes, preventing profit transfers to tax havens. This marked another pivotal moment in the story. The Norwegian parliament established a special directorate, OL, Oljedirektoratet, responsible for legislation and administrative legal oversight of the oil industry. Additionally, a state-owned company, Statoil, was established to participate in the extraction operations. This allowed for the training of new engineers, the acquisition of know-how, and the control of the extraction process. R.V. Johnson, the first head of Statoil, vividly described his goal as follows. "First, we sit in the back seat and watch how they drive. Then we move to the front seat next to the driver, place one hand on the steering wheel and the other on the gear shift. Finally, we move to the driver's seat." A golden era began for Norway, with each passing year seeing new platforms being opened and extraction increasing. Additionally, the events of 1973 acted like rocket fuel, further accelerating the growth. The Yom Kippur War resulted in an oil embargo from OPEC countries on exports to Europe and the USA. Only within a year, the price of oil quadrupled, causing supply issues for many countries. Norway, during the oil shock, saw an opportunity to strike it rich. Not only were all the wells nationalized, but investments in transmission infrastructure were also made, which changed Norway's position as a country supplying energy to the rest of Europe. The 70s and early 80s brought enormous profits. A stream of money flowed in, and a large portion was invested in extraction infrastructure, the expansion of the state, and social benefits. In 1990, after many discussions on how to utilize such vast amounts of money, the decision was made to create the Norwegian Government Petroleum Fund, now the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. By 1996, the first money from oil sales were transferred into the bank account. And that bank transfer receipt became one of the historical documents in the recent history of Norway. The fund had two main objectives. First, to serve as a safeguard for the state budget against mild short-term fluctuations in income from oil and gas exports. Second, to serve as a tool for addressing future financial challenges related to an aging population and the anticipated decline in oil and gas export revenues. It is a means of preserving and passing on national wealth to future generations. Initially, the focus was on accumulating bonds and other obligations from countries around the world. Over time, a portion of the capital began to be invested in the stock market. The turning point came in 2008. The subprime mortgage crisis in America spread across the globe. The ripple effects of the stock market crisis also reached Norway. The year before, in 2007, a decision was made to increase investments in publicly traded companies. In 2008, the fund lost 23% of its value in a single month. Critics of investing money in the stock market describe the decision as rash and even foolish. Despite market sentiment, a bold decision was made. Instead of selling undervalued stocks, the fund began buying them, and on a massive scale. Tech companies, pharmaceuticals, construction companies. Within a single year, stocks worth the equivalent of $100 billion were purchased, making the fund the owner of 0.5% of all publicly traded stocks worldwide. By 2009, the fund not only recovered its losses from 2008, but exceeded them. From that point on, the pace of wealth accumulation accelerated significantly. In just 6 years, the value of the fund's assets tripled, reaching over $800 billion in 2014. London, Mayfair, the Paulin Estate, 1 New Oxford Street, Paris, Place Vendôme, Les Ateliers Seguier, Champs-Élysées. These are just a few among many. In Europe alone, the fund owns a total of 439 properties, including 82 office buildings, 82 retail properties, and 15 residential properties. Currently, the fund is divided into 3 parts. Real estate makes up just 2.5% of the total. 25% consists of bonds issued by various countries around the world. The largest and most important portion is made up of stocks of companies from across the globe, accounting for approximately 1.5% of all publicly available shares worldwide. Thanks to this, 2/3 of the fund's current value is the result of investment returns, with a significant portion of these returns coming from stock market investments. To illustrate how staggering these numbers are, let me use an example. In 2024 alone, due to the significant allocation of capital to technology companies, the fund recorded a profit of approximately 13%, amounting to around $222 billion in a single year. For comparison, this figure is equivalent to the GDP of Qatar, Kuwait, or Malaysia. But how do they use all that money? In May 2020, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund added 12 new companies to its blacklist, including mining giants such as Glencore and Anglo American. This decision was a result of these companies' involvement in coal extraction, which is against the fund's policy on fossil fuel investments. As a result, the fund divested its shares in these companies. In 2024, due to the war in Ukraine, the fund withdrew its investments from Weichai Power. The company was found to contribute to the sale of weapons to states involved in armed conflicts, where those weapons were used in ways that violate international rules of warfare. The Norwegian government has established strict rules and principles governing the allocation of funds. As a result, the fund does not invest in entities that produce nuclear weapons, pollute the environment, fail to respect human and workers' rights, have issues with financial liquidity, engage in bribery, or commit tax fraud. In June 2024, fund challenged Elon Musk's $56 billion Tesla compensation package. Owning nearly 1% of Tesla's stock, the fund exposed critical governance issues. When over 70% of Tesla shareholders initially approved the package, the fund stood firm. A U.S. judge later validated their stance, ruling the compensation unfair. Nikolai Tangin, the fund's CEO, emphasized the need for executive pay to align with long-term performance. This is how Norwegian pensioners humbled the world's richest tech titan. The road to all these successes was paved with both triumphs and failures. It took about 20 years from the first oil extraction before the money was even invested in the form of a fund, and another 20 years to develop the current management structure. Undoubtedly, one of the factors that ensured the success of the fund was a stable and long-term policy. But how did they resist the temptation of populists and politicians to misuse the money? The Norwegians adopted the 4% rule, which means that annually only the equivalent of 4% of the fund's value is transferred to the state treasury. Why 4%? Over the long term, the average return on investments is precisely 4% annually. This rule ensures that a reserve is always maintained for payouts, regardless of the situation in global markets. There is another factor, namely upbringing and instilling values. Nikolai Tangin, the current director of the fund, shared the following story during his TEDx talk in 2021.
I got it from a 4-year-old Norwegian girl called Elise. And in the jar, there are 3 Norwegian crowns. And on the card, it says, "Dear Nikolai, could you please look after my money in the oil fund?"
With this mindset, it's difficult to persuade the public to waste money on trivial things. It's not hard to respect current prosperity when children learn from a young age what the fund is and understand that it holds money belonging to every citizen of Norway.